This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, Y.M. Nelson. In this episode, we talk Star Trek Discovery, seasons 1 through 3. And I'd like to start off by saying that this episode does contain spoilers of those seasons, as well as maybe a few spoilers of Star Trek Picard. So if you haven't seen Star Trek Discovery, seasons 1 through 3, I suggest that you file this one away. For now, go watch this wonderful series and come back and discuss with us. Hello, Nerdy Romantics. OMG, everybody. If y'all knew, if y'all knew what we were talking about before this recording started. But I have to give you a little hint. We were catching up on Star Trek Discovery and talking Easter eggs and feeling all, I don't know. We were nerding out, but then at the same time, we were like, what did we watch? Because there is so much stuff here. So today's episode is obviously Star Trek Discovery, and we are going to talk about some of the feelings we had about this show, some of the big stuff that we liked about the show, and of course some of the cool nerd stuff, and we will end up with kind of like a rating. So this is going to be a review of seasons 1 through 3. Right now there are 4 seasons out right now. There is a 5th season planned, I believe, but we are going to talk seasons 1 through 3 because, as you probably know as fans of the show, this show has a lot of stuff in it. There's a lot as far as storyline, there's a lot as far as action, and there's just a lot to talk about. So let's get into it. We have today Staci and Jen. We're going to first kind of talk about how we felt when we found out that Star Trek Discovery, this show called Star Trek Discovery, was actually going to come on. For a little bit of background, Star Trek Discovery is actually, they say it's about 10 years before the Spock and Kirk Star Trek that you know, the original series. And if you've ever heard about the fact that Klingons and humans didn't like each other once upon a time, this is where it all started with Star Trek Discovery. So Jen, how about tell us, how did you find this show? We know this is not your first Star Trek episode, but how did you find this show, and what did you think when you heard that there was going to be another series in the Star Trek franchise?
You know, I've been, I wouldn't say that I was a super devoted fan of Star Trek, but I have definitely always been very aware of them, and I've watched pretty much everything. What I absolutely have always loved about the Star Trek shows is the way that they talk about being able to get along, being able to explore, and just sort of depending on each other and sort of creating this found family on the ship. So when I heard there was another one that's out, and there's a few Star Trek iterations that are currently available, not only Picard, but like Below Decks and that kind of stuff that's out there. So when I heard that there was going to be another one with Discovery, I was like, all right, I'm in. And I kind of came in a little blind, honestly. I didn't do any research about what it was going to be about or what it was going to entail or where it was in the timeline even. And instead, I just sort of came at it and was like, all right, show me what you got, guys. And from the very first episode, what I was incredibly impressed with was that they had really gone in a whole new direction with a lot of the characters, but they still felt very authentic to the world. I was also extremely impressed with the special effects because it feels like you are watching a movie in every single episode. Everything looks so clean and so real, and so everything from the, you know, the makeup and the costuming that they've done with some of the non-human looking characters. But yeah, just all the special effects that they've done are so incredibly impressive.
They
That
are.
And the story is so rich. Oh my God, there's so much that's happening in every single episode that it has taken the whole experience of watching that show to a whole other level. So that's kind of where I found it, and how I came across it. And like I said, I just sort of came in a little blind and was like, all right, Star Trek, let's go to space again. Let's do this. And I think that they've been able to take it in this whole brand new direction that also feels so familiar and right.
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's almost like the good stuff of Star Trek, the reason why I became a Trekkie, it just got 10 times better with this show.
Mm-hmm.
It just amped it up really, really
So much.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Stacy, what did you think when you first heard or when you first found this show? What did you think?
Well, initially, did it come out around the same time as Picard, or was it a few months different? Something like came around the same time, or at least I acknowledged it around the same time. And I was excited about it. At the time, I was more excited about Picard coming out because I just loved Picard at the time. I really wasn't, really like, oh gosh, I can't wait for Discovery. I was more interested in Picard at the time, because I think I started watching the was it Enterprise with the guy Quantum Leap. I know that's not what he posted, but I watched that and I wasn't really in love with that show, so I didn't really have at first high hopes for it because of that. But when I found out who was going to be starring in Discovery, that made a little bit of a difference for me. And that was mainly because the actress who plays Michael Burnham in Star Trek Discovery, she was on Walking Dead, and I liked her character there.
Oh, she was on Walking Dead?
She
Who
was
is
on
she?
Walking Dead,
Who is she
and
on Walking Dead?
she was
You
not
remember?
like she wasn't a major in like the earlier seasons, but she became a pretty regular, and I wouldn't say important, but she was a good. I liked her character there,
Like a
and
recurring character.
reoccurring character,
Yeah.
and being that she's a black woman there, besides Michonne. Michonne was like the only other black woman that
Right.
stayed the whole way through. But she and this other character, Lori, both left the same time to start their own, TV shows. I was like, oh gosh, because Lori's character left in the show like she could come back, which she did with her show canceled. But
Oh
how
boy.
but Michael Burnham's character, and what was her name? Is it Sonequa Margaret? But the person,
Yeah.
is it Sonequa Martin Green?
Martin
Okay.
Green, yes.
But her character left. She basically she died. She spoiler alert if you watch Walking Dead. But it's gone. It's but at that point her character
Yeah,
died
Walking
off.
Dead is over.
So there was no coming back for her. It's like if this Discovery doesn't do it, she got to find another show. But because it was her, I was like, okay, let me give it a chance. I mean, I'm not sure how much detail you want me to go into how it initially. I was having the same feeling I had from Voyager when I first watched this, which was like Voyager, finally got a woman captain, they get lost in space.
Yeah.
I kind of felt the same way initially with this. But when I started watching Discovery, I realized I really liked the show for the show.
Right.
Picard, I liked Picard, but I liked Picard because of Picard. And I only liked it and started really watching. If Picard wasn't in it, I'm not even sure I would watch Picard. I mean, I know it's called his name, but it's not. It's so focused on him, and the characters are so. The show, I don't know. I just like Discovery, and it gives me that old feel for Star Trek.
Yeah.
Picard is his own world, but it's not.
It's really about him.
But it's about him. While this one, I love the characters and I love the actress that plays, the main character. I love Michael Burnham, but it still has that Star Trekky feel for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have really enjoyed watching it. After I got off that first hump that, okay, she started a war. And after that,
Yes.
She
started a war, and then she was thrown in prison.
Jail. And I'm like, really?
And went to jail, right?
To prison?
Like, why you gotta do that, right? Yes.
So, granted, she started a war, she needs to go. But at the same time, it's like all this time we still going to jail. So
right.
At first, that's why I wasn't as feeling it, but I kept on going. And I do have to admit with Jen, like the themes of Star Trek are really, really there. That especially once you start watching it, like season 3, especially when they're trying to get the Federation back on track, they do talk about the whole meaning of it was exploration. It was meeting new civilizations, new groups of people, joining together, helping each other out for no other reason than to make this universe, this galaxy, a better and more cohesive place. And it's awesome. I really have enjoyed watching these over again now. It's like, oh gosh, I really did enjoy this.
Yeah.
And so, like I've been watching a lot of it this week just to like try to catch up and everything. And once I started watching, it's like, oh my gosh, so much happened in each season, multiple storylines, but at the same time they did go together. Even though when we were trying to talk about it, it seemed like they weren't. It was really, and I do like those Easter eggs that we saw. And I'll stop for now, but I really enjoyed watching seasons 1 through 3. It brought back that whole, Star Trek feel for me. And I don't want to go into much detail on anything else, but there are certain things I like. Oh my gosh, the evolution of the Klingon look.
Yes. You know we're gonna go into that, right? We're gonna go into
I don't want to go anymore, but my overall thoughts and feels of it is I'm glad that we decided to go and watch Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah. If you don't know, Star Trek Discovery has been out since I think about 2017. And so that was like years ago. And we just kind of rediscovered Discovery in a sense to get ready for this podcast. I didn't have a podcast in 2017, so I didn't have a chance to talk about it. But also, I don't think I was really into it in 2017. I do remember, and do y'all remember if didn't like an episode or 2 episodes of this actually come on regular TV? I feel like an episode or 2 of this came on regular TV.
It was on CBS.
Yeah.
Well, it was on CBS
because weren't they
first episode was broadcast on CBS. I went and looked it up because I was curious about that too, and it did release on CBS, and then it was moved to the CBS All Access.
Yes,
is now the Paramount.
Yeah, Paramount Plus. And if I'm kind of looking back at it, I'm thinking at the same time there were a few shows on CBS that they were either introducing or had spun off. The Good Fight being one of those shows that was a spinoff of The Good Wife, the long running show with Juliana Margulies. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to start up their streaming service. That's what that was about. If I'm looking at it and thinking about it in those terms, a lot of those shows came out. And I think, Staci, that's why you remember Picard kind of coming out at the same time. It came out, I think, a season later or a year later. I think Discovery has it may have 2 seasons on Picard, but they did the same thing with Picard. They if I remember correctly, they gave us 1 episode on CBS, and then they put the rest of them on CBS All Access. And so, they said, you got to go out there and look at it on CBS All Access. And unlike some of the other major networks that have half of their shows are free or whatever, none of the shows on CBS All Access, as far as I can remember, were free. But yeah, it was kind of a push to get people to go out to the streaming service. The reason why kind of focusing on this because that's how I got into Star Trek Discovery. That's how I entered into it. And I feel some kind of way about how you trying to treat me right now with the let me put the good stuff, let me dangle this bait in front of you, and then we're gonna put it on paid streaming. I'm feeling some kind of way about that. Especially when you have the main character. I mean, we know that Michael Burnham, played by Sonequa Martin Green, we know that she's the main character. She's like the Picard here, she's the one that we follow. And for her to be the one that we follow, it was almost like that kind of watershed moment that Staci had with Janeway. We finally got a woman heading up stuff. And so I feel like, we finally got a Black woman heading up stuff, and I was watching because of that. I will say though, when I first, heard about it and I first kind of got into it, that was what hooked me, but I really did not want to like this show. And part of the reason I didn't want to like this show is how I became a Trekkie in the first place. I had never watched, and I've still only watched a few episodes of the original series, the Kirk, Spock, Sulu, Uhura, that cast, which that's only 3 seasons long, y'all. I can't believe I haven't watched but a few of these episodes, but I do have a total appreciation for, that whole cast. Total appreciation, total respect for it. It's canon. Really, I got introduced to that cast through the movies, which we talked about in Picard. But because it's before TNG, which that's my sweet spot, Star Trek The Next Generation with Picard and Riker and Deanna Troi. Hey y'all, by the way, I know this is like totally off subject, y'all, but did y'all know this? Speaking of Black women in Star Trek, did y'all know that Star Trek The Next Generation, they were going to cancel it after the first season? And Whoopi Goldberg said she wanted to be on the show because she was like, I really want to do a science fiction type of show. And Nichelle Nichols was like, a big inspiration, of course, for her, like she was for a lot of especially Black women back in the day. And so Whoopi Goldberg pretty much saved that show for us. Isn't that?
I didn't know about Whoopi Goldberg saving the show. I do know that it came close to canceling the first season, though.
Yeah,
that's all right.
She wanted to be on this. She wanted to be on the show, and I kind of thought about it. And I'm actually in that. Where I'm watching it. I'm watching again. The season has started over again, y'all. I've told y'all on a couple of episodes that I watched the TNG and Voyager and DS9. I watch them on repeat every weeknight because they're on like white noise in my house. And they've kind of repeated and they're back in season 1. And I'm just kind of looking, I'm kind of waiting to see when Guinan is going to show up. Now that I know this, I'm just like, oh, when is she going to show up? And so, it's like I have this new knowledge and I'm looking at it in a different way. Sorry, that was just an aside, y'all. In a way, they say in a way she saved the show because they were going to cancel it after the first season. And she said she wanted to be on it. So she was on it and they got great ratings. And so they kept her on there. Because she's Whoopi Goldberg, and at the time, I mean, we're like, yeah, Riker and Picard or whatever, but Whoopi Goldberg is a star by that point, right?
Didn't she at that point done Ghost and everything?
Yes.
So she's a movie star.
A movie star.
Little show.
Yes. Yes. She was big time by that point. That's kind of where my sweet spot is I know TNG and beyond, right? I don't really know about those times when the Klingons and Federation were fighting. I don't remember that. That's old school stuff to me. And so I really didn't want to like it. And then when they did this marketing thing by putting it on CBS All Access, I said, okay, so you're going to put a show with a Black woman behind a paywall where people can't access it. That also made me a little upset. I had to get behind that paywall. And I was like, I'm going to invest in this for a little while. And so they hooked me. Because after that first season and the way they did that, Jen, you're totally right about the level of like the CGI, the level of, the production level, Staci with the story, all the complex story they have going on. It is.
That's what was so surprising.
Why you have behind a paywall, because it costs so much to do it.
They said that's why they have behind a paywall. But Jim, what were you saying?
I was going to say, there was a time when you had like the 300 cable channels, right?
Yeah.
And the stuff on those cable channels a lot of it wasn't that great.
Nope.
So every once in a while you get like a superstar, but most of the stuff that they were creating that was going straight to paid cable or basic cable type shows they weren't that great. They weren't spending a lot of money on them. The writing was very dry. And you were like, well, whatever. And that's what I was worried about with this show. Yeah. That they were going to cheap out on it because it was going on to the streaming service and they didn't think there were going to be a lot of viewers. And I mean, that would be a self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess, right? If you put crappy shows and then you're going to charge me for them, why would I pay for crappy shows? Right. So that's something that it's a totally different way that the streaming services have come about providing value to the fans, is that they could have done a crappy not so great version of it and put it out, which is what they used to do on, like I said, on the basic cable, but they threw a bunch of money at this.
Yes.
And every penny they spent is on that screen. You have amazing actors, like really amazing actors, and just real heartfelt storylines, and just real, there's things to celebrate, and there's tragedy, and there's excellent science.
Yes.
Nerdy person over here, when they start going into the science discussions, and I know like a lot of the stuff isn't really, I know it's made up, but even the way that they talk about it makes you think, oh yeah, we can totally do that. That sounds plausible. Why wouldn't we?
But not only do they talk about it where it's like, yeah, we can totally do this. They are excited about it. They are nerding out about it. Like first season when they figure out that whole spore drive. Yes. And they are talking about that spore drive and they are just totally geeked out about it. And it makes you excited about it too. And it's like, I don't know what grade I got in biology, but I am down to work on a spore drive.
Right? Yes. They totally leverage that. But then, and here's the other thing that they've done really well is that, okay, so we spend an episode and we nerd out on the spore drive or what have you. And sometimes that type of information would kind of be forgotten or glossed over in future episodes. And that's not what they do here. No. There are some decisions that are made kind of like we'll call it middle of season 3, when there's like an entity that's like trying to take over things, and they realize that what's his name has all this knowledge of the spore drive. They're like, we have to get you far away from here because this technology, this knowledge is so rare, literally in the universe. It is so rare that we cannot allow this to fall into the wrong hands, which means that you cannot fall into the wrong hands. It's honestly like, it's kind of gut wrenching because he's taken without consent. They're like, right, don't do this to me. And yet they do it to him anyway. And I don't know how deep we want to go into the spoilers here, but it's
spoil away.
Yeah. Because his husband is in danger. Yes. And they're like, yeah, we're going to put you basically on the other side of the universe anyway, because even though your husband is in danger and you might be somebody that could save him, but it's more important in the grand scheme of things that we protect the knowledge of the spore drive. And that's why we're going to do this to you. And it's just heart-wrenching to watch him be like put in that bubble thing and like zipped away. And you're like, what are you doing? Yeah. Right? You understand it on like both sides, right? You understand the logic here, but I really appreciated that they have been able to kind of pull that, not just that the spore drive was cool in one episode or two episodes, but that it actually impacted how the storyline ran in the future too. So
yeah, because they did that several times with the spore drive about when trying to find the, how to use the spore drive. And that monster, which was, what is it?
Gormagander. The one that powered it?
Yes.
Yeah, a Gormagander.
Okay, but it's actually based on something here.
Yes.
That little microscope. I know it when I see it because it looks just like it on the show, but a whole lot larger. But when they show that kind of using that and how it affected using that instead of him, the guy,
right,
to do it, and having to make a choice about that. But also when Tilly and her imaginary friend, who wasn't so imaginary,
right,
how all that came into play, but how that one thing they created has affected multiple beings. Should we still do this if we're actually basically abusing an animal to get across time and space,
right,
in which they did for a while there, or that they're going through this mycelium
network,
whatever, was going through somebody else's backyard. It was literally going through somebody else's backyard. And I know they're probably like, are you kidding? You just came through again? There is so much going on. And that one thing about you would think, like Jen said, one thing, it became multiple episodes, which brought back people that we thought were gone. I really like how they don't just, some things that you use here comes back and makes it more important and makes those people involved in that also in a way more important and more personable. So I do think, kind of going back to I believe, like I said, you were talking about the openly gay relationship.
Yes.
Just seeing their relationship and how it just kind of their loss and then found and then separated again, and how deeply moving they made it.
Yes.
Which you not just, hey, look at a gay couple in the court. They actually talk about their relationship and what it means to them.
Yeah. Exactly. It's normalizing. They on this show, even though I feel like Star Trek kind of does this in its own way, it's gotten better and better and better, normalizing basically the way we think the world should be. People getting along, and people of different races coming together and things like that. This show kind of took it above and beyond as far as normalizing what we see instead of making it a point. It's like they're an openly gay couple. We know that. Let's move on. This is how a real couple with real problems acts. It doesn't matter. They're both guys. They're a real couple. This is how real couples act. And so you get that normalization kind of thing going on there, which I really love about this show. Sorry, Staci, I didn't mean to take that over, but yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more. What did we think about kind of some of the things here, I would say, that have been normalized, or some of the things that we don't see on other shows, some social things that actually, come to mind that we're like, yay, Star Trek Discovery. Thank you. And let's keep watching. For me, of course, the openly gay couple, that definitely, struck a chord here with me. For me, the biggest chord that was struck with is Michael. The fact that her name is Michael, she's a girl. And, she's kind of running things. I like that. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about, chime in. What do y'all think about any of this stuff that I've just said?
One of the things, at least I liked, was that also they had it about their the couples, their non-binary child that they've kind of adopted. So that was different. Which is, you normally see, again, you rarely see about having a child in a relationship and all this in a really not in that many environments, unless I'm just trying to think about how many that we actually see that are really normalized and you care, really do care about. And I just really liked that part of it. I also liked the fact that Michael's relationship with Spock. We see that later on, you know, her relationship with Spock.
Right.
And how she handled her whole relationship in youth with Spock, and how basically she kind of almost destroyed him as a child, thinking that if she pushes him away, it will protect him, but that ended up making it kind of worse for him.
Right.
But she was a child doing that. And I'm gonna have to be honest, I love Spock with the beard.
Yes.
Beard made everybody better. I'm just
Yes, it does. Unless you got one of those like ZZ Top looking things. No, but that beard that he has is like, oh, nice.
Her Ash Tyler, her love interest in the first one. I like that she had a love interest too.
Yes.
His look when he had the beard, I was like, you still look good. I love you still.
Right. I love you still.
That whole relationship was so complicated. I mean, I don't. Again, this would be spoilers, but we find out that he really isn't who he says he is, but he doesn't know he isn't what he says.
Right, exactly. It's complicated to a big level. That's more than just Facebook. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's really complicated. But I do like the fact that she has a love, because a lot of times we don't see that a love interest that isn't like Picard. You never saw him had a love, barely ever saw him anything.
Yeah.
And Captain Kirk, I already told him he had space herpes. I mean, it's just he slept with anything and everything, which is weird because it's like he slept with it, but it was still everybody who looks female, so he would sleep with them.
Exactly.
But no, you know. And then I'm thinking about Deep Space Nine. He didn't really. He's near the end. He had a relationship, but again, it was more they got married. It all kind of felt along the same kind of lines, but you never really saw a whole lot of courtship, especially from the female kind of perspective of it. I mean, I really enjoyed that because she's had, if you keep watching it, she has 2 love interests as we go along and see. Mm-hmm. Both of them very different, but both I really like, because a lot of times you see somebody and they leave one person or something happens and they have another one's like, I liked the other one, but I was like, I like them both. I really did. I'm glad you had
right.
to go, you know.
Right.
Okay, I liked them both, but oh shoot, what's his name? That shows up in season 3.
Cleveland?
The guy in season 3 though.
Cleveland Booker.
Special.
Yes.
Cleveland Book or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Book.
Okay. Yeah, they call him Book. Yeah.
He's an upgrade. I'm just gonna say.
I have to agree with that, because the other one had so many issues going back to be like, okay, he got a lot going. He got a baggage.
Yeah.
Cleveland is an upgrade. I do agree with that.
Oh man.
Yes, he is. I'm sorry, that actor David Ayala. Yeah, he's a muse in a future novel of mine. But that's a whole nother can of worms. But you're right. Yes, he's an upgrade in the fact that, you know, he has his stuff together. She's a mess by the time she meets him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You know, she is straight messy, but he gets her all together. Gets her together enough where she can get a little promotion there, you know, without spoiling too much, even though I am saying there are spoilers. He's a definite upgrade in that he's got his stuff together pretty much, you know, when they first meet. And I love that about him. To be honest, I'm going to say it, and yes, this is surface level considering we just talked about normalization, but my heart got really giddy to the fact that she had both of her love interests were people of color. When do we see that on this type of show? Cleveland Booker is definitely, he's a Black man, so this is Black love here, and I'm all for that. Thank you. I'm all about that, and so yes, that's just a side for me, but it's a good thing because we don't see that on this type of show, and when I say this type of show, I don't mean a science fiction show. I mean a major drama, because this is what this show is, y'all. It's a major drama, right?
For sure.
To me, it could stand up to it could stand up to an ER, it could stand up to a 30-something, it could stand up to, you know, any of these kind of major shows where they're going through and having emotion. It just it just happens in space. We don't see that a lot. If we get one person of color on those shows, it's a victory. And then it's not really normalized. It's almost like there's got to be at least one episode where they're having some kind of race relations issue, or racist grandma comes to Thanksgiving dinner, and and it's always something going on. It's always an issue, but here it's not, and it's totally normalized, and I love that. And I kind of, before we get too far away from it, I do want to kind of go back to Staci, what you were saying about the kid that Stanton and his husband, I can't remember what his name is.
I'm looking at the cast list. It says Hugh.
Yes. Their child, it was so interesting because I knew at some point, once we found out, because their child is a Trill, well, not a Trill, but their child was in love with a Trill. The Trill died. And so they got the symbiont. Yes, that's it. So they got the symbiont, and I knew once we met, there was going to be a storyline there. But I love how there was and there wasn't a storyline. It was just at one point, Stanton said, yeah, she's doing well, or such. They said, I use them, they, them pronouns, right? And they were like, okay, all right. And then everybody just kind of adopted it. And it's like, I really wish this would, this could happen in real life, instead of a parent being like, oh my gosh, why do I have to use they, them pronouns? What's wrong with this child? And and then other people getting in their heads, and then politics. It's just, I want to use they, them pronouns. And they were like, okay, all right. So, they did, and they just kept on going with life. It was
easy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It was easy. And that's what it should be. It should be easy.
It's easy and respectful. It's anyway, whatever.
I want to be called YM on just call me YM. I mean, those are my initials. But it's like, what is that going to take away from you? Absolutely nothing. What did that take away from the show? Absolutely nothing. Right? Because we had several episodes where that didn't come into play. That was in like the middle of season 3. They said that they wanted to be called they, them. And things just kind of went on. My thing is, if you're a Trill, aren't you they, them anyway? To me, at some point,
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I do.
But then,
because
then I know
because they're a symbiote and they have like all these other lives inside of them, so they are
male, female, anything.
Yeah, so they're that. But I don't know. I felt like this was. I don't feel like that the other character, the other like symbiotes, sort of saw themselves that way. They didn't see themselves.
They
as, like,
did.
They thought that they seem to have been more like, well, whoever is the host, and it's not. It just wasn't. So it didn't feel like it was supposed to have been like they were supposed to think of themselves as they or them or he or she, and it was really up to the identity of the host that had that sort of contained all of them and contained all their knowledge. And I thought that was wonderfully done, the way that they talk about how those symbiotes exist inside and work together. And don't they bring, because there's a storyline where Trill is struggling to connect, because that's one of the things with not Trill. What's their name? Their name is Trill? They're
from Trill.
Their
name is
Enduri.
Enduri. I think that's right. Enduri.
Yeah.
So where Enduri is, they need the expertise of somebody that was had a previous life and was part of the symbiote, but Enduri cannot speak to them, and that's a whole storyline about how they cannot speak to them and how they are struggling with this whole process, and you felt for them because they so wanted to get it right, and they're supposed to be this special entity, and they didn't feel that special. And it was just, I just thought it was really well done. They made that character who's not the star of the show into somebody who's very sympathetic and very, you can empathize with them in the way that they're feeling, even though, you know, I'm not a symbiote. You know, there's so much depth to that one character, and that's what I love about the storytelling in this series, is that they have brought so much depth to a character that is who has so little screen time, but has a storyline that is so meaningful and makes the whole experience of watching the show richer, even though they're not like they're not the one holding the phaser most of the time.
Right. Exactly.
But they do mention in there that even before because I've been watching, and the character does mention that even before the symbiote was in me, I felt like being called them, they before that. So it had nothing to do with that. And exactly. I really like the fact that they said it, that it was part of their identity, not this alien creature inside of it identity to cause that. So I liked it that they did that.
Yeah.
Gosh, while you were talking, I was thinking about one other thing. We got to talk about my favorite sexiest fishman alive, Doug Jones.
Oh my gosh, yes. I was waiting for this, right?
He plays so many characters that I just love. You know, he's all heavily costumed, and you know, he's always
in everything.
Everything.
Yes. I'm wondering if he like prefers that way.
Well, I watched like an interview he did about it, and like he would have liked to have seen real screen time as his real face.
Oh, he would.
Instead for certain things. I think, what was it? Something he talked about. It was because he did not say he complained about it, but when he was in Hellboy, he plays the I forgot the name of the character, but it's again like a merman character.
Yeah.
But later on, they used the voice of the guy who plays Niles on Frasier.
Right.
And he was like, but I was my body and all that. You know, he's played that, and he also did what was the water?
Yeah. The
color, no,
it wasn't the color of water.
The love
it was
story,
the something,
the merman love story.
Yes, the something of water.
And he played that in Hocus Pocus 1 and 2.
Yes.
You know, there's just so much that he's played in that I've enjoyed his character. And then he's Saru. In this one, again, he's under a whole lot of makeup, but we do get to see him as a human, which I gotta admit, I like the makeup, but but I mean, I said nothing's wrong with it, but the mystery's gone.
That was kind of why I was like, has he ever said that he prefers that? Because it seems like he was so much comfortable in his whole Saru thing. And then when he wasn't, you know, when he was just himself, or when he was human, I guess, because he wasn't himself, he's still playing a character. But
yeah, but I think, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, it just seemed like he was a little bit on the uncomfortable side. Again, this just may be his brilliant acting, because he's kind of supposed to be a little uncomfortable in those scenes. So
every time he comes on, it's like, oh my gosh, Doug Jones is gonna be here. Who's he gonna play? Yeah,
right.
Because I just love the way he moves. I mean, he plays those roles, whatever role he's in. He plays that so well. I mean, he's there with
the shape of water, not the color of water. Yeah, the shape of water.
You know, as Gollum. I mean, to me, he's almost better than. I mean, you know, the guy who plays Gollum, you know, and he, you know, does. Yes. Mm-hmm. He's to me better than that in some ways, but both of them are great movement and character. You know, you feel the character just by the way he moves. Because when he does that move and he's on some, I don't know, hoofs or whatever, how they get, you know, basically heel his high heel shoes.
Yes.
And he does that, those hands going back. You know,
right, those hands going back, and it's like, oh my God.
He walks so smooth with it. I'm like, go ahead.
And it was funny because he was like, you know, when he was human, he was like, I feel weird. And I'm like, yeah, it seems like you do feel like you're out of character. But yeah, it seemed like it's so effortless. And it's like, now, you know, this is not effortless. but he's good. He's
Yes.
just good at what he does.
And his character, I love the arc of his character, because what his people were,
Right.
which were basically, and in both of this, I was like, this universe and both universes, they were both lower on the food chain, in a way. I mean,
Right.
literally lower on the food chain.
Right.
The
literal food chain, y'all.
And like, he left his whole community because he didn't want to die like everybody else did. And, and he managed to go be the only person of his species to be in the Federation, managed to get that high up, being the only one. And he came from a community or group that was not technologically advanced. The other group that was on that planet was, and he used them to contact, but his people were not technologically advanced, but he got to that point and did all these languages. I mean, he was just superb. Amazing. But having that fear, because that his whole culture was based around fear.
Exactly.
And having a little ganglia thing that just subconsciously waggling around like, oh my gosh, there's something. And he was like he was like an alarm system right there, just a walking, talking alarm system.
Exactly.
And then him discovering that, oh my gosh, they were apex predators the whole time.
Right.
Spoiler,
the whole time. Yeah.
But just because, but also you just show that how a community or society can be totally brainwashed into believing something that they really weren't.
Yeah.
And granted, the other group did it because they were being slaughtered. And so they did it to protect themselves.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you saw how his people were so scared, so low, and killing themselves off, or, once they get to that point that where they should have jumped over, that they were brainwashed believing this is a bad thing.
About that. Yes.
And not going to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it's just, and how he just rediscovered, like, this is the first time I've ever not felt fear. And I was like, my God, just that whole thing, that whole arc for him, and seeing him change from somebody less, not saying he was meek to begin with, because he wasn't necessarily meek, but again, every day he faced his fears because they were a fearful race of people. Right. But he faced it every day to accomplish that until he wasn't anymore. And I loved his character. Every time he came on, I was like, Saru.
Yeah. I'm going to say this and then I'm going to get off of this. But it's kind of a parallel of kind of seeing what oppressors can do to oppress people. Mm-hmm. And why that just doesn't make logical sense. But it's really a power thing. And it was, and they were just trying to oppress them because they were the apex predator. They were the ones and they were just trying to oppress them. Even when Saru, had that arc and owned his power and everything like that, it wasn't like he went back and tried to slaughter all those people. So it's really a fear on the other side. That's really what that's about. They're just trying to project it onto someone else. That's really what oppression is all about. It's all about fear. And I'm just going to leave that there because that's what Star Trek can do to you. It can make you actually think about real life, which is what the whole point of it is. But I do want to leave that there because, you mentioned Saru and you mentioned costuming and you mentioned the fact that, of course, he's an alien get up and makeup and everything like that. And I want to talk about, y'all, the Klingons in the first season. And the amazing job with the costuming there and the makeup there and just their look. I was kind of concerned about that because, in TOS, in the Trill episode, in TOS, the original series, this is one of the few episodes that I've seen, y'all. But in the Trill episode, there are Klingons in the Trill episode. They're actually the same Klingons in DS9. The Klingons that go and try to fight the albino in DS9. I don't know if y'all remember that episode. Jadzia is Curzon, and they all have a K name. Kang, Koloth, and I can't remember the other one. But anyway, those are the same Klingons in TOS in that Trill episode that there are in DS9 when they go and fight the albino. you know, in the first season, there's the albino right there. And I'm wondering, is this the same, like, you know, albino that they were trying to fight in DS? Is this the same one that they were, you know, talking about? We've been hunting this guy for 80 years and and all this other kind of stuff. You know, you just kind of wonder how much did they kind of connect. But what isn't connected is the way that Klingons have looked throughout the series. Because in that very first episode, or the TOS episode, Klingons look just like humans. They just have these beards. And in fact, they kind of make you think that they're like Russians.
Okay, the original Star Trek.
The original Star Trek. Yeah.
I do remember. I didn't see the original Star Trek, but I do remember Star Trek: The Next Generation, where they go back in time.
Yeah, that's DS9. That's DS9. They go back in time. That's the episode, the Trill episode.
So, because they go back in time. Because was it Worf that goes? Somebody goes back that's from their time. He says, "What happened to y'all?" He's like, "I don't want to talk about it."
That was when, remember, like halfway through DS9, the DS9 series, Worf was on DS9 because
I thought
him and Martok were Martok or whatever, and then he got married to Jadzia and everything. That was DS9. This is the exact same episode I'm talking about.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the Trill episode. And every time they talk about Tribbles, that's the episode. So they merged the TOS footage with them. They green screened them in that. But yes, that's why he says that, because they're Klingons, and and don't you get that kind of feel like they're supposed to be kind of Russian?
Yeah, I was at the time. I'm sure they were supposed to, you know,
but it's right. It's a different time. It's the late 60s. What was that?
Yeah, it's like, okay, we're gonna have the war.
I mean, Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah. That time.
So we're gonna have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you notice not just there, and then when you come forward and you go to the Star Trek movies and you see the Klingons there.
Yeah.
And then they come here, and I'm like, can we pick a lane? How we
right?
How these Klingons are supposed to be? What caused the change in everything?
But at least they're somewhat similar. But it's funny. I was like, Klingons really evolving here.
I know, what caused it?
They evolved backwards, because that's supposed to be before TOS.
And then they didn't have initially any hair, and I was like, so what's up with that?
Right. It was like, but y'all, do y'all not think that was like a style choice thing?
That was
like they were trying to say that it was a fashion thing, because in the first part, they were like, we don't want to have hair, but in the second, or at the end, I guess that's the end of the first season. These seasons are so long. It's at the end of the first season where they were like, oh yeah, we're all growing hair. Like hair is
we're growing our hair back.
Right.
I think it would have something to do with being at war or peace or something like that. Because they did mention about, even though the Klingons have been growing their hair back. He's like, yeah, so. And I was like, yeah, they did. When you see him, like, oh gosh, they finally got some hair back. This is the Klingons I kind of remember.
Well, I will say though, the makeup, even though the evolution is all messed up, the makeup and the way they actually portrayed the Klingons and actually had them speak in their language, which we know as Trekkies is an actual language. Like Klingon is an actual language. They made it up. It has all the markers of actually being a language. So they had them speaking in their language, and the way they had them made. Jen, tell me what you thought, because I know Staci's talking about evolution. But what do you think about the way they look in Discovery, or even just the whole Klingon equation in season 1?
The evolution of Klingons from, them being the bad guys to being on the, in the Next Generation, they were on the bridge, a part of things. And then we've got all this like time travel that's happening, right? Yeah. And what I appreciate about them is that I feel like in a lot of ways they've maintained their cultural identity, we'll call it.
Yes.
where what they value has kind of stayed consistent, but the original series, they were just on opposite ends, right? They didn't see how they could be a part of the Federation. The Federation didn't see how they could be a part of things. And so I appreciated that evolution when in the Next Generation, when they had come to some sort of agreement and they were going to be a part of the Federation. So I appreciated that. So then we get into Discovery, and in Discovery, we kind of have this opportunity to go back and forth in their history and in who they are, and sort of see them a few different ways. I think that might be I think it's the only species that we really see from that many perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, Vulcans, certainly the Vulcans have kind of stayed on the side of the Federation, I think, for the most part. And then,
well, they were the first contact.
Back and forth.
They were the first
Yeah,
contact.
first
That's
contact.
why.
And so you just kind of feel like I think it's so interesting the way that they have played that out, the way that they have really used that species to show so many different sides of how, like, negotiations and how relationships can evolve over time. You know, you see
Yeah.
the friendships that they have on a one-to-one basis, but you also see them when they have had when the Klingons have sort of gotten on the opposite side of whatever the Federation wanted, and how that would affect an individual personally. And yeah, so that's, I don't know, I think that as a species, they've been used really effectively to show that you can still be true to your cultural identity and also affected and disagree with what sort of the leaders of your group are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I do have to agree with that, because I mean, when I talk about the evolution of their look, again, I think those Klingons and the Vulcans are like the two, and for the longest time, major alien species that humans or Federation have been interacting with the longest time. And we do see, and to me, a lot of times the Vulcans are seen almost holier than thou, just
right,
in a lot of ways, beyond
Yes.
reproach on everything. But with the Klingons, we do see that they are a group of people who are very clan oriented, group oriented, warmongering they seem, but they do have honor and a code, their code. But and they've always stayed. I have to agree with Jen. They do adhere to their whole culture the whole time through in Star Trek, all the Star Treks. I mean, I didn't really watch the original one, but in all of them, they have stayed that way. And it was nice to see, well, not nice, but to see how the war started, because they talk about that in the Next Generation.
Yeah.
But how that ended, I was like, did it really end at that point, or did they have another skirmish? Because I know Worf came into being
because he was a kid, and they were but weren't they? But they were fighting Romulans. They were fighting Romulans. That was, remember, Kittimer?
Never mind. Never mind. Once you said that, I was like, that wasn't the stuff. That was Romulans, and being that the Federation a starship intervened, that at least brought them even closer together, the Klingons and the Federation.
Exactly.
Because they can. Thank you for that reminder. I need somebody.
Again, white noise. I watch it every day. It did. It brought them closer, because that peace that they had during Kirk's time, and kind of what we see here at the end of Discovery, is just kind of a tenuous peace. Because again, these are Klingons, all right? It's like, if you do one thing, if you mess with their honor, they're gonna fight you. Don't care what they got going on as far as a treaty. Are you kidding me? It was tenuous, but then when they had that common enemy, the Romulans in TNG, that's when it kind of, it came together. And, they do say on TNG, even though Worf is on the bridge, and we love that about, the fact that he's on the bridge, he's the only Klingon in Starfleet at the time. So, we see on TNG, Worf being the only Klingon in Starfleet. We see on DS9, one Ferengi in Starfleet. I don't know why these names are escaping me right now, and then here on Discovery, we've got the first Kelpian in Starfleet. And I just think it's so cool. It just becomes more and more inclusive over the years, right? Over the series, it becomes more and more inclusive. And I agree, Jen. It's that relationship between the Klingons and the Federation it's not an easy relationship. And it's also not easy to become more inclusive as a federation. You know, you kind of, you see that gradually happen, and it gradually gets better, but it's not just like, hey, we're just going, we just keep moving, and we're just doing it and we're all good. No, there's skirmishes, and there's fights, and there's issues going on. And
yes,
with that whole Klingon Federation kind of relationship, you see that whole dynamic relating, and being in a relationship is hard. It's gonna have some days where it's gonna be like, okay, we're buddies today, and then it's gonna have some times where it's like, okay, we are fighting today. Right. It's not. But Staci said something that kind of struck me as well, and I hadn't thought about it until she said it. Yeah, the Vulcans, they do have that kind of air of, we're beyond reproach, we're all whatever. But if you think about it, the Vulcans basically meditate half of their own personalities away, right? Mm-hmm. It's like they are repressed so they can act like they're better than everybody else. Whereas the Klingons, they are true to themselves. They do everything that they want to do. They are true to who they are, and they've always stuck with that. Whereas the Vulcans have a lifetime of repressing themselves to try to appear, we're better than y'all.
But then get the Romulans. And you're like, oh.
Right. The Romulans are just like, we're better than y'all. Forget y'all.
They're like, we show all the emotion and we're devious.
Right. We can manipulate the whatever out of all of y'all, and that's why we're better. Yeah. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. We have talked so much about this show, y'all, and I'm not gonna lie, we talked for a whole hour before we even started recording. That's how much stuff is in this show. There are a couple of things that, for some reason, I wanted to mention, a couple of little Easter egg things that had me giddy. Well, two, not just had me giddy, but had me actually going and getting excited about TOS. So I'm just going to say blanket in season 1 and in season 2, because in season 2, they go to Talos 4. And there's a flashback there to an episode I had not seen from TOS, but it actually kind of gets me excited to see TOS, right? Because it's like, I want to know, what went on.
Are you talking about the same thing that I'm thinking about, that they're trying to get that time crystal?
I think that was it, right? And the woman Vina. And then they had those from the
original. That's what I haven't watched. I haven't really watched any, but that is something I do recall, because I have seen parts of that episode, and I was like, oh, I remember this.
Right. I'm just like, wow, yeah. And that's one of those episodes that I hadn't seen, and I was like, I need to go back and look at this. But then, we talked about this earlier, so. I'm just gonna kind of reiterate for you guys in the audience. We also had kind of a flashback there's a flashback kind of episode in season 3 with Captain Georgiou, and she's going back into her parallel universe, but it's actually that whole episode where she's going back into her parallel universe is actually reminiscent of another TOS episode, which I talked about, with Picard, and with the whole xenophobia kind of thing with Picard, where she's going back into this portal kind of thing, and there's a guardian there, and on TOS they call him the Guardian of Forever. And then when she goes back into that portal and she's actually re-entering that whole life there, it looks a lot like this particular episode where Kirk is a general, and it's a very, I'll say it, it's a very kind of Hitler-esque kind of episode. There's a lot of violence and stuff going on there, which is also kind of why it made me that episode made me think about when I saw in Picard how they did that kind of thing. That episode kind of carries on, kind of like a tribble. You can never get rid of a tribble. Doggone it. It's like, but they're so cute. Don't touch them. They'll multiply. Some of these Easter eggs from the first 2 seasons are kind of like TOS Easter eggs, and I like how they kind of put them in there because they're like, you probably aren't a TOS fan, or you probably just know Spock, and you probably just saw The Wrath of Khan, but you probably didn't watch this series. So let me give you a little flashback, because they do flashbacks here, and where it's like, oh my gosh, I get this. You know, they have tribble jokes, and in season 2, they have a joke about being a red shirt in season 2. That's from TOS. The whole thing with Spock, to me, also made me want to go back and look at Spock, because is it me, or and I know this is probably because they were trying to integrate Spock, and then they were going to spin him off for Strange New Worlds. I get that. And I love that Spock was there. I'm totally with Staci on the fact that he was nice looking, especially with that beard. I mean, I thought I liked Zachary Quinto as Spock, but oh gosh. Wow. Anyway, to move on from that, but the whole kind of relationship between Spock and Michael, that had me actually kind of going back to Spock's character, and the fact that she was his sister. I'm thinking, wasn't this just kind of made up for this show? But because didn't Spock have a sister, and the sister's name was Amanda?
I don't know.
Or is the mother? No, is the mother
is Amanda, and I think he had a brother in previous. Was it is the movie, or I thought he had a brother, because they do mention,
and not a sister.
But in this show they do mention that he does say, because they're like, well, you know, how they gonna explain Discovery and all this stuff. He had a sister, and they're like, when they left.
Yeah.
When they went to the future, they said everything is going to be purged. My memory, you know, there will be no reference or so to. I was like, okay, that's how they.
Right, so that exactly, so that's how they disappear her. Yeah,
you
exactly.
know.
I knew that had to be because there's people like me out there that's thinking, I think Spock had a sister, and Spock's sister was named Amanda, not his mother. His mother was named something that started with his mother was actually on a TNG episode. Y'all remember that episode with Sarek, where they did the mind meld with Captain Picard? His mother,
no, I do
Perrin. Her name was Perrin. And and actually the actors and the actor and actress that played Spock's parents in that TNG episode were the same ones that played Spock's parents on TOS. Because I have seen that. So the guy who played Sarek on TNG, that's the same guy who played Sarek on TOS. But his mother was named Perrin. And of course, she was, you know, human. But for some reason, I feel like, and I don't know where I'm getting this from, that his sister was named Amanda. And here, his mom is named Amanda. And I'm just wondering if they tried to kind of correlate it, in case he says, I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't remember a sister. I do remember he had a brother.
So maybe that's what I'm thinking, that he had a brother and not a sister.
But
that was genius, the way they had, you know, kind of explain that away by saying, okay, we're gonna purge all of this, you know,
purge all of it because they've gone to the future and we can't now know about the time stuff. And it's like, okay, I have no sister named Michael.
Oh, right, exactly. I was like, okay. All right, that explains this blip. But I thought that was cool. You know, these are just kind of just a few little Easter eggs, but a lot of them were from in the first 2 seasons were from TOS. But as we look at the 3rd season, because they're in the future, and they're actually beyond even Picard, you
Mhm.
know, they could talk about anything.
Yep.
And I thought it was cool that, you know, in the third season, is that where we meet Michael's mom?
No, that's in the second season.
Oh, the second season where
We meet her mom, but I think we see her again in no, we don't, because the third season, yes, she does. We do see her again in the third season. We do.
And so, yeah, because in the third season, that's where she's doing a lot of the Kawat Malat stuff that she does. I thought that was really cool that they mentioned Kawat Malat because, of course, right after I watched that, I watched Picard, and Elnor is in the Kawat Malat. And I was just like, they're bringing in everything now. That's why they went to the future. They went to the future so they could just talk about everything. Because, you know, they do talk about everything. You know, the reason why Romulans and the Vulcans now are talking or whatever, and they're trying to figure out the whole burn situation, is because Ambassador Spock has reunified Vulcan and Romulus. And he did that in TNG. You know, that was one of those episodes, those 2-part episodes in TNG, that actually it was more than two. It was 1 2-part episode, but that was how Spock ended up being on TNG for a little bit, is because he was trying to unite Vulcan and Romulus, because there was a faction of people on Romulus that were like, hey, we want to know about our Vulcan cousins, you know, and to see that kind of come to fruition there is kind of cool. But yeah, so many Easter eggs that we could not possibly even go through all of them here. But those were just, you know, like a few. And the fact that they went to the future, it actually, to me, because of course in the beginning I didn't want to like this because I didn't really have that connection with TOS, but now that they're in the future, we can get Easter eggs from everything that I've seen, right? And you could feel giddy about, you know, just seeing these little things as they go along, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's from TNG, and oh my gosh, and the thing that's cool here is, it's also something that Jen kind of said in the beginning, is that this is just or maybe Staci, maybe you said it, I can't remember who said it, but this is just Star Trek, right? It's just everything. It's the whole story. Whereas Picard is just Picard, right? There's some stuff you're going to have to leave out. Like we were talking about, you know, he doesn't really have that big of a connection with DS9, you know, and so they don't say a lot about DS9 and Picard. They make a couple of little Easter egg mentions here and there. He doesn't have that big of a connection with DS9, but here in Star Trek Discovery, especially now that they're in the future, we could just talk about anything. We can just pull all of this in, because it really essentially is a love of Star Trek. It's just a Star Trek love fest here. So we've got TOS, we've got, you know, everything from the beginning to, you know, to now at this point, because they're the furthest in the future as far as the timeline goes. You know, because of that, I feel like I think I said with Star Trek Picard, I'm giving that 5 stars, but I'm giving this 5 stars plus. Since I gave that 5 stars, we need a little 5-star like plus here on that, because you just get so much here. There's so much story. There's so much. Jen was saying that there's so much you know, production value here. Also, one thing that I do want to say about production value, this is another reason why it kind of converted me, y'all, and why I got over the fact that they took this off network television, is that we get very adult in some of this. Right, there are not a lot of scenes, and it's mostly in the language. You know, you're not gonna hear some of this language 9 o'clock at night on CBS. because you can't say some of this stuff, and then there's some, adult scenes here. I think that makes the story better, y'all. I don't know about you, but it's just like it's Star Trek, but we're not in kiddie land anymore. We're not in kiddie Star Trek. We're not in this is family friendly Star Trek, where, and actually, it's funny because it kind of makes me think of what you were saying, Staci, about or what we were saying about the fact that some of these people are just a straight up hot mess and all those kinds of things. And two, we've got a lot going on, with people and their characters going through stuff and doing all this kind of stuff. With that, you kind of need the realness of adult language. You kind of need the realness of people actually in relationships and not just saying, I really like you and kissing and then going to commercial. And then the next day they wake up and it's like they're waking up together, or they wake up and they're in the same, house or something like that. This is adult Star Trek, as if it wasn't before, but it's definitely not family friendly for everybody kind of thing. And I think that's a little bit of the plus, why it won me over a little bit. Y'all, what do y'all think about that? Or did that not even enter your minds and I'm just a prude?
I'm going to disagree with you.
You don't like that?
Absolutely. I don't think that there's anything in there that I wouldn't have. I would totally have watched that show with my 6 and 8-year-old. Absolutely, I would have watched it. I can't think of. I mean, I
can't really think. Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. I just didn't find anything in there that was questionable, or even the language that they're using. They might use some curse words here and there, but even that, it's not pervasive by any means, and it's not it's not overused by at all. So I totally would have watched this with my kids.
And I don't have to agree with Jen. I didn't really see anything over the top really of it, but I think about if you're comparing it to the earlier episode, not earlier, the earlier series, those, it is different. But TV has changed so since then.
Yes.
I mean, I do have to say, like when you said that, and people sleeping together, it's like, oh yeah, you didn't really see it now, because I'm thinking about Star Trek Next Generation. It's like you really didn't see that at all in that. Mm-hmm. So, and if you compare that to this, where you do see people lying in bed with each other, okay, that is different. I wouldn't say it was over the top, but it is stronger than it was in the Next Generation. But I think when you compare it to what's out there now, catch a season of Riverdale, you'd be like, what? Yeah. You're like, yeah, this is nowhere near it. But it is, I say a lot. In some instances, if you're compared it to the Next Generation that came out when we were kids, yeah, it is a lot more. But technically speaking, it is not a lot for this day and age of what shows we see out there.
Yes. So yeah, I probably should have made that caveat. I was kind of comparing it to what we saw from this franchise in the past. And even with Kirk being, the player
space whore.
Is, right? Yeah, the space whore. Even with him being the biggest, space whore that he is, we didn't actually see a lot. We didn't actually see him, but we knew stuff happens.
Yeah.
We didn't necessarily see stuff happen. So yes, I probably should quantify that and say compared to previous Star Trek, not compared to just TV in general. So no.
Yeah. Compared to previous Star Trek, it is a lot. I wouldn't say a lot racier, but it is, you could say it's racier, because it does
it's a little bit racy.
Talk about more about relationships, and that there are people having sex out there in space, that are, are touching in space. Well, But I mean, I still think it's friend friendly because of the fact that even though there is that, I mean, but they are having relationships, not just a fly by night kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it. To me, that's what kind of brings it to that plus, that over the top, is that they show everything about the relationship instead of just showing this kind of idealized version of a relationship, which is what I love about it. And would I have really understood it in a way that I understand it now if this was on when I was a kid? No, but then you kind of think, well, if we show this whole realness about relationships, would we be a little bit better off mentally? Would we have a little bit less idealized version of what's going on out there, and have a real life version of what's going on out there?
That is an excellent point.
Yeah. But yeah, thinking about where this falls as far as rating, and as far as did we like this as much as Picard? Did we like this as much as TNG? Or just how did we like this in general? That's kind of where I fall as far as, a rating or whatever. So let's talk about ratings. Like, what did y'all think about Star Trek Discovery? Like, if we were rating it, if we're giving it Goodreads rating, again, to remind all of y'all out there, the Goodreads rating, yes, we know it's for books. Essentially, this is a book podcast. We just go into nerd pop culture every now and then as well. But we're going to stick with Goodreads ratings on this. 1 star is that we did not like it. 2 stars, it was okay. 3 stars, we liked it. 4 stars, we really liked it. And 5 stars, it was amazing. So, Jen, what did you think? What's your rating?
5 stars.
Oh, so more than Picard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What I like about Picard is totally different and separate from what I like about Discovery, because we've already kind of talked about the fact that Picard really focuses on Picard, and there's so many things that I love about that show. So I do love it, but it's almost as if Discovery is in a different genre, even though they're both set in the Star Trek universe. Because Picard is so much about a personal journey, and Discovery is really takes us back to this idea of a community, hurling through space and figuring out how to make their way, and how to solve problems together, how to live together, what impact that they're going to have on literally the universe, which is a really different feeling than you got when you watch Picard. And so I have thoroughly enjoyed the depth that they have explored their stories. I love how layered each episode is. How, this isn't something that has like an A story and a B story. We've got like D story, E story, F story, G story going on. And some of those stories are told in very small pieces over the course of multiple episodes. And I just really appreciate the consistency that they have too, in terms of being able to have stories that are layered and complicated, but not forgotten. That those interesting key moments that they have been able to introduce are remembered, and they're brought back, and they're really part of the world, and not just a one episode, one-off kind of thing. So I really appreciate that about it. So that's why it's a 4-star for me, or 5-star for me. 5 stars.
All right, 5 stars. It was amazing. Staci, what did you think?
I really can't remember what I gave Picard. Was that a 4 I gave it, or?
I think you gave it a 4.
Well, this one was definitely a 5. I was just like, whatever Picard is, this was one more than that. And I do have to say, it's really the same kind of reasons that Jen said. It was Picard, like I said about earlier, was Picard to me was more about focused on Picard and his journey. But Star Trek Discovery is to me truly a Star Trek show. And I just really enjoyed all season. At times with Picard, I was not saying it was dragging at times, but sometimes I really had to focus to watch it. Where this one, I don't have to really, not saying you don't have to focus. I mean, I don't have to will myself to sit down and watch an episode of Discovery. It was just really, it gave me the good feels of Star Trek: The Next Generation. It really did. It's to me all the same feeling of the original Star Trek. They're they're going, I would say going back, but they're going forward because they're gone to the future and they can now do their own canon and have to worry about messing up anybody else's timeline.
Right, exactly. The Klingons can look whatever way they want.
That's why I want to see, how have they changed? Have they changed again?
Right, exactly.
It's just, I really enjoyed this, and it brought me back to how I kind of felt when I first watched The Next Generation. Because after a while, they started doing The Next Generation, and which I like, the Deep Space Nine, which is, and I like that. But then, some of those other stuff that's come out, or wasn't feeling the same way about it. I'm just really was disappointed by Enterprise. I was just,
yeah.
But
I think a lot of people
this one made it back to that feeling for me. And the fact that you have that feeling, but you have a cast of characters that are really diverse than has ever been to me.
Exactly.
For Star Trek. I mean, it really has been. I mean, you think about all the different characters, men, women, all different races, all different alien, backgrounds too as well.
Right.
And they hit on so many different topics. You talked about LGBTQ plus. We talked about what was it?
The abuse of animals or whatever.
Abuse of animals. So we have abuse of animals, but also the lady who has the eye thing going on.
Yes.
Who reminds me of droid. But also before that, when we had to think about control, and the lady that was basically almost a robot in a way, but wasn't. They had so much AI. I was like AI on it, but she's technically, it wasn't AI, but it was interfaced with her. Where did she begin, and then her augmentation end, and all that?
Because she was human, and she had gotten in an accident, and they basically and it's funny that you say that, because even though you don't see it because it's all internal, Cisco's dad would always joke about he's had every organ replaced, and he has artificial everything, but you don't see it because he's human. But here we see somebody that's actually been rebuilt. We see them, we see it from the outside. And that's just cool. And the fact that they're on the bridge, because that is the other thing, now that you're saying that, the fact that they have this not just diverse cast, but the diversity is not just a one-off here and there like they do on some of the other episodes, but the cast on the bridge that you see all the time is 90% human, or mostly humanoid looking, or mostly human looking. Here we have diversity with the humanoid characters. We have alien characters in roles, more diverse, I should say, alien characters in roles. It's not as, even for it to be Star Trek, where we know they're gonna meet different alien cultures, it's really diverse.
And that just brings me, and I'm sorry we went off topic, supposed to be in this, but I also think the aliens are diverse too.
Yes.
Sorry about that, because the aliens are diverse. So I was looking at some of the aliens and how it used to be, they showed you an alien species, all the aliens looked alike, even though they all looked alike, even though they were aliens. But now if you look at the alien species, I was like, on this one episode, I was like, oh, they have made the aliens, even though it's a whole different species, the aliens are themselves diverse. In the way they're looking. It's like, it was like, exactly. For a while there, the Klingons, basically white actors with the makeup, and then they like for a while black actors with the makeup, and then whatever race, and we put makeup on them. Well, now it's like, okay, we're gonna have this different alien species. We have different races, and then put the makeup on them, and that makes it look like they're diverse too.
Yeah,
and so you can see that. And so I'm 5.
So 5, everybody.
5 on this. I like this. I really did.
Oh my gosh, 5s across the board here. So you know what that means, y'all. That means we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about season 4. And if we come back and season 5 is already done, we're talking about season 5. That's happening, right?
Hey, I'm there for it.
Can't wait.
All right. We are definitely going to come back and talk about season 4, but this wraps it up for seasons 1 through 3 of Star Trek Discovery. And hey, y'all, 5s across the board. So we hope that if we haven't spoiled it too much for you, and you haven't watched yet, that you do go and watch. If you've watched season 3 and you're ready for season 4, or if you've caught up and you want to talk about it, nerdyromanticspodcast.com. There is a contact section. You can talk all about it. Send me an email. But if you want to be caught up and you want to be here when we do talk about season 4, then make sure that you are subscribed to our podcast and subscribe to our newsletter, which you can also do at nerdyromanticspodcast.com/subscribe. Jen, Staci, I am so happy that y'all came on to talk about this show with me. I cannot wait to talk about season 4 with y'all. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for indulging me in all of this.
Thank you for hosting, hun. This has been awesome.
It's always a pleasure. Do appreciate it. Being invited.
So that's all for this episode. We've got a new website at nerdyromanticspodcast.com. But don't fear, all of our episodes and their show notes are on our new website. While you're there, please consider donating to our podcast with the donate button at the top right-hand corner, or the Buy Me a Coffee button on the show notes for each episode. Your donations go straight to keeping this podcast on the air and keeping all of our episodes out there for you to listen to whenever you want to. If you want to get our show notes in your inbox, please consider signing up for our Nerdy Romantics newsletter. The sign-up form is at the bottom of each page on our new website. Thank you for listening.